All right, hello, good evening, and welcome into a Friday edition of KC Sports Tonight. I am Mark Poulose, joined by Neal Jones. Neal, I know you are worried about the weather. How are you doing here on this Friday?
I'm doing good. I mean, I couldn't believe how cold it was. I went out and shot a story that aired on KCTV 5 at 4. Are you going to run it at 10?
We are.
Really neat story about a really, really good athlete in the Northland coming back from a severe injury, caused him to miss his entire season last year. We don't want to give it away, but really neat story. But I got out and I'm like, okay, this is really cold. It was 7 degrees. And I was thinking how horrible. When's the last time I was in 7? Oh, I forgot. Yeah, the second to the last home game for the Chiefs. It was 7 degrees. Warren Sears was in here doing weather going, wow, it's really cold, kind of brisk. And I'm like, it's not brisk. It's like deathly cold. But that's what it is when the weather people, have you noticed, are always inside. And we're always the morons that get stuck outside freezing to death.
Hey, Neal Jones, certainly no stranger to the cold. I believe it was a couple of years ago. He was at the Chiefs-Dolphins game that was so cold, and you had to get your wedding band cut off after that game, correct?
In fact, you know what? A network guy came in, was in to do the Christmas game, and we're in there in the photography room underneath the stands about an hour before kick, and he comes up to me and said, "You're the one that had frostbite." And I said, "Excuse me? You had frostbite 2 years ago." And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "I was in the room when you came in and you pulled off your glove and you're like, is this frostbite? Because it's really, really white." And they, like, 3 guys looked at it. They're not doctors, but they're the nearest thing to it. They're people who've had frostbite. And so they said yes. And so he said, run tepid water over it for 15 minutes. So I did. The next day I got up and it was still really bad. My thumb was bad, my ring finger. So our HR guy, thank God, our HR guy, I called him and he was on the tarmac getting ready to take off and go to Florida on that day after the Dolphins game on Sunday. But he picked up his phone and said, "What's going on?" And he goes, "Don't go to a walk-in clinic. Go to an emergency room. See a physician. See a doctor." And so I went in and they sawed off my wedding ring. So I am real careful about that stuff. I noticed that no weather people ever have had any digits sawed off or anything because it's pretty warm in here.
Hey, maybe we'll get Warren Sears or Luke Doris out there in the field. But, guys, that weather this weekend, certainly not anything to mess around with. Please stay safe. Be sure to also just tune in with us here on KCTV5 as our weather team will keep you guys updated throughout the weekend. Also, some news on that front. On Saturday and Sunday night, we will not have our 10:35 p.m. KC Sports Tonight show because we are having expanded weather coverage this weekend. So we'll see you again next weekend. But
I thought it would be because you were planning on anchoring both of them, and they wanted to try something different. is what the rumor is, at least in my head.
Hey, it's all about weather, and that's what leads the ratings. But Neal,
I got to ask you a question. This is the first time we have been together since you went down to Miami for the national championship game. Your Hurricanes, you've been rooting for them from day one. They lost early or whatever, and everybody was running them down and everything, and you stuck to your guns and stayed with them, and I really applaud you for that. You didn't turn on them when it looked like they were going to miss it, and lo and behold, they get all the way to the national championship game at the place where you went to school, at the University of Miami, in the city you lived at during college, even though you're from here. What was it like going to the game?
Well, Neal, I know you know this answer, but I got to break the news to the masses that I was not down there at Hard Rock Stadium. I was watching it up in the Northland, just north of the river. And it was a heck of a game. I got to salute my Hurricanes.
Why was that? You were off all week.
I was. The get-in price for a ticket at Hard Rock Stadium the week of the game was around $4,000. Actually, I looked at going to the game after we had beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. I was like, all right, I'll look ahead to the Fiesta Bowl where we were taking on Ole Miss. Tickets for that game were about $300. I was like, okay, I can do that. But flights were about $1,200 a person. And I was like, okay.
To Phoenix, yeah.
To go to Phoenix. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. Okay, I'll look ahead to if we win at the Fiesta Bowl, I'll look ahead to the championship game. At that time, before the Hurricanes had won in the Fiesta Bowl, the get-in price was $3,500 to the national championship, and it only went up since then. So it was a little bit not in my. If I had your paycheck, maybe I could have gone.
Let me ask you a question, and be honest. Were you single? Had you not been married a year and a half ago, would you have gone?
it would have been much higher probability.
That's what he's saying yes. That's his way of saying yes without getting in trouble. So you're saying that the fact that you got married caused you to miss your school's national championship game.
That's the ultimate spin zone. Hey, if my wife is watching, those are Neal's words, not mine. I am not responsible for them. But hey, if I'd been a single guy, you know, I would have had no strings drawing me to stay here. Like, I could have gone down there. I would have. I mean, what do I need to save the money for? I would have just been able to go. It would have been a heck of a time.
But they didn't win. If they had won, like you did see him in the Cotton Bowl, you went down with your dad. Is that right?
Yeah, with my dad. Yes, it was an unbelievable game.
And that's a memory you guys will have forever.
No, it certainly is. Got to see a pick six. It was a tough season there for the Canes. But hey, we have much more to talk about.
A tough season.
A tough way to end the season is what I should say. 13 wins, the most in program history. Good to see the Canes back where they need to be, near the top of the college football world. But here, closer to Kansas City.
Oh, and did you hear about the ratings? The ratings were the second highest ever for a championship game, isn't it?
Yeah, it was 33.1 million people watched it. More people watched that game than any other NBA, any NBA Finals game in history. I mean, it was the most watched game, I believe, since Oregon-Ohio State in 2014, 2015.
It was the highest rated sporting event other than the NFL. The NFL's king. But other than the NFL, it was the highest rated sporting event since I think the 2016 World Series. So really, and you know, a lot of us have been critical of why are you playing college games on Monday night? But clearly that they were able to, that worked out for them and they were able to get a massive audience. But I'm going to tell you, I think that the idea of playing straight through on Saturdays and finishing off on New Year's Day or the day after New Year's Day, if it's on a Sunday, at one of the four major bowls, that to me is the best answer, because then you don't have coaches and players transferring out of off of playoff teams so they can get to their second school by the second semester so that they'll be eligible. They need to do that. It needs to be done.
Yeah, the college football calendar, it certainly is not serving the fans, the coaches, the players. They need to find a remedy there because it certainly isn't working. But we do have some news to talk about here closer to home today. The Chiefs officially announced they are hiring Eric Bieniemy to be the team's offensive coordinator once again. Neal, I know you've covered Eric Bieniemy for a very, very long time. This is a little bit of an interesting move to me because I think when a couple years ago, everyone was saying Bieniemy should be a head coach in the NFL, and then when he left Kansas City, it seems like some fans were kind of happy to see him leave, and now all of a sudden it seems like some fans are pretty excited to have him back. Where do you land on Eric Bieniemy?
I think that he added something. I think anybody who ever attended their practices at training camp, the voice you heard screaming at all the offensive players, including at times, not very often, but at times, Patrick Mahomes, was Eric Bieniemy's. Eric Bieniemy was the enforcer. All these penalties that you saw the offense have, you didn't see a lot of that because he was one of those guys. If you made mistakes, I've heard stories that I had a player tell me, a former player tell me, hey, you think he yells at training camp, you ought to be in that room with him if you botch it up, because the whole offense is in there and he's yelling at one guy. And, you know, he doesn't make him stand up and embarrass him, but they play the play on the big projector and everybody's looking out on the big screen. And he's like, what are you doing? And do you think having him in the room might help on some of these penalties they've had, particularly on their offensive tackles and some of the problems they've had? They've had so many killing critical penalties. I got to believe it helps. I also think he's a really good running back coach. I think it helps them in a number of ways. And remember, it's Andy Reid's offense. Andy Reid is going to be the one scheming it. Eric Bieniemy can be the enforcer, both on the practice field and in the film room, to make sure the guys get their mind on business and won't put up with some of the garbage that's happened.
I'm glad that you brought up that word accountability, because I feel like that's something that we've heard a lot around, first kind of the murmurs of this hire, and now obviously that it is official, is that Eric Bieniemy really holds the players accountable. He's going to bring accountability to this team, accountability to this offense. But, Neal, I got another question for you here. Like you just said, it's Andy Reid's offense. It's Andy Reid that runs the offense. Like when Matt Nagy was the offensive coordinator, who ran the offense? Andy Reid. Like, even though we're switching out the offensive coordinator, why do we think there's going to be so much more accountability?
Well, they aren't. I don't think, first of all, I don't think that the Chiefs were a terrible football team. Statistically, they were in the middle of the pack until they lost Patrick Mahomes. Certainly after he left, their production went way down, and it affected their ranking. But when he left, they were in the middle or upper middle of the NFL in yards per play and some of those things. They had done a good job. They hadn't been perfect, but most of those problems are on the offensive line, in my opinion. They are bringing in a new wide receiver coach who's a veteran guy, spent some time here under Dick Vermeil in the early 2000s, coming back to Kansas City. He's had a long career. Presumably, he will be another person in the room saying, hey, we need to – and there, if you talk to people around the NFL, they'll say the Chiefs had good wide receivers, but they didn't always run good routes. And – I don't know that it's as simple as blaming it on the coach, Coach Embry, but he ends up getting fired, and they bring in a veteran who has not worked with Andy Reid before. So that's a new set of eyes on the playbook. And I'm sure that Andy's going to say, look, you have any ideas? Because I think you and I would agree that the Chiefs' offense doesn't have a lot of free guys running free, receivers getting open just because of the play. It seems like a lot of it relied upon Patrick Mahomes moving around, buying time, and then making a good throw. It seemed like they don't have as many open receivers as they used to. So Andy Reid's going to have to deal with that, no question about it.
No, I really agree that there really doesn't seem to be as much space on the field, and we've heard for so many years the West Coast offense that Andy Reid runs. What's the point of that? To get to the open space and get there. And when I'm looking around the football field, it's like, boy, it doesn't seem like there's any of that open space. Hopefully some of that can come here with Eric Bieniemy. But again, I want to caution fans, like, Andy Reid has been running this offense for years, and we started to see some of these penalties, obviously with Jawan Taylor, some of these alignment penalties that we saw this year.
Don't say his name.
Are we convinced? It seems a lot of Chiefs fans are convinced that just putting Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator that we're going to see a much cleaner operation. But my question for that would be, like, Andy Reid has been the boss of this offense when we've seen kind of some of these problems pop up. So kind of see what happens there, but still staying with this.
Yeah, but let's be fair. Andy Reid's still going to be he's going to be drawing up the plays. He's going to have input from other people, no question about it. But at the end of the day, he'll call the game, which is what you want him to do based on his track record. But I do think that having another voice on the practice field, in the film room, could help him get the players online. The other question there is, I asked you to put this in there, Kelce clue. We heard Travis Kelce really come to the just singing the praises of Eric Bieniemy, talking about what he meant to the offensive players. Hey, he was the guy that came in at halftime and talked to us about the adjustments. He was the guy that got in our grill. Certainly, we've seen Travis Kelce get into it both with Andy Reid and with Eric Bieniemy. Mm-hmm. You know, and so I think he came to his defense and said, this guy's unbelievable. He can help us a lot. Does that make you think that maybe, just maybe, Travis Kelce is one step closer to coming back?
Neal, I'm going to take that little step of logic and maybe go one step further, because today, after the Chiefs announced that Eric Bieniemy was coming back, they published an old video from training camp a couple of years ago. Travis Kelce is there with Patrick Mahomes, and they're kind of doing a little segment for their in-house production. And Travis is holding a Gatorade bottle as a microphone. And he goes, "Hey, if one person on this team who could be your best friend, like, who would that be?" And he puts the Gatorade microphone over to Patrick Mahomes, and he says, "Eric Bieniemy." And then the both of them kind of go a little crazy. Now, the Chiefs released that video, and to me, it's like, boy, if you're going to start releasing some of these videos on the heels of Kelce's comments yesterday, you're really building up fans' expectations and emotions to a comeback. And I think there's a big reason for him to. Why wouldn't he come back? He's still a productive player. He finished third in the league among tight ends.
He's healthy.
And this is what they live for. This is where they're most alive, where they feel most alive on the football field. Neal.
And remember, he's going into a marriage next year, right? He's going to be like you and me. He isn't going to be able to fly down to Miami and see, like, if Cincinnati made it to the championship game, he can't just fly down there and drop $5,000 or whatever it is to see the University of Cincinnati play. He's going to be like you and me. That is, we have to check with the real boss and find out if we can go.
Yep.
So, maybe there's some straight, maybe
happy wife, happy life. But hey, maybe the quickest out for him for that is to return to the team. He's like,
right.
I got to go to work.
Right.
What do you want me to do? I have to go.
I can't mow the lawn. I got to go play football.
Otherwise, I'm going to get fired. So, to me, I really feel like it's building up for a Travis Kelce comeback. Hopefully, we'll see him. Neal, any last thoughts on that one?
No, I hope he comes back. I hope that the last time he walked off the field as a Chiefs player is not at the tail end of a 6-game losing streak. I hope that I think it would be great. The key to me is he's healthy. He's not coming back from a knee surgery. He's not having to rehab. He says he felt good at the end of the year, and I take him at his word. So, but seriously, we don't know how marriage will affect all that. He may, in his mind's eye, for the last year, been looking forward to retiring and being able to get married and start doing stuff with his wife. My wife did not want to do stuff with me, but maybe their relationship's different. I don't know.
Who knows? The great Liz Jones should be a candidate for sainthood for all that she's had to put up with over the years. But now moving from the gridiron to the hardwood, tomorrow is the 304th edition of the Sunflower Showdown. The Kansas Jayhawks, ranked number 19 in the country, are headed out to the Little Apple to take on Jerome Tang and the K-State Wildcats, who are 1-5 in conference play. But Neal, once again, the health of KU head coach Bill Self has become a big question. He obviously missed this week's game at Colorado, did not make the trip after he dealt with some issues there in Lawrence, Kansas, and had to receive IV fluids at the hospital. Neal, I know you've covered Bill Self for a very, very long time. You have known him from a very young age. Obviously, these health concerns, at least to me, as a guy on the outside looking in, they really do seem to be getting scarier and scarier. If you were around Bill Self, if you were in his family, how would you maybe approach these conversations about the future?
I would not. I think I asked him when he had the press conference about coming back, about, what are the doctors telling you? And he said the doctor asked him, do you love what you're doing? Because he asked the doctor, is this something, should I be looking at my future? And he goes, well, do you love what you're doing? And he said, yes. Coach Self said, yes, I love what I'm doing. And he said, well, keep doing it. There's no reason to stop. So if the doctors are telling you you're okay, you've got some issues, and your dad's a doctor, you understand that it's when you solve a problem, it doesn't always solve everything, and you might have to tweak the medication, you might have to do some other things, but it doesn't mean that it's the end of the line. But look, if the doctors are telling him this could be life-threatening, then yeah, I think that he's got grandkids, he's got 2 children, he has his wife. He's been married to forever and ever. I don't think you want to die and leave them and not see what happens with them, not get to see your grandkids grow up over the sake of coaching basketball, even though Bill Self, when you think of Bill Self, he is a basketball coach. He's the guy that, you say, what'd you do this offseason? Watch the NBA playoffs. He just loves basketball, and he's doing the right thing. He's got the right job, but you have to hope that the doctors are telling him you're okay. This is to be expected, and just move on down the road.
I know that obviously Coach Self, he said the other day that this is kind of something that's happened to other people, and they want to be proactive and take care of it and kind of get out ahead of these things. But if you are Travis Goff or you are the president of the University of Kansas, I think you have to start thinking that you could have a potentially horrible situation on your hands, because I'm not saying that this is what the situation is or that his health is this dire, but if he were to have a health situation on the sidelines during a game, I'd have to think that would be maybe the #1 nightmare for the entire University of Kansas, because you cannot have a situation where Bill Self in the Naismith Hall of Fame is potentially going to have a situation on the sideline at Allen Fieldhouse. This actually reminds me of a situation when I covered the Miami Heat when I was living in Miami, where Chris Bosh was an All-NBA player, and the Heat had just signed him to a big extension, but there was a blood clot issue that was kind of popping up that they discovered, I think, after one long-term flight. And Chris, like Bosh, was still an All-NBA player. He was still a very, very good player, but they said, Chris, like, we cannot have, because the risk for him, I think, was so significant enough where he could have had a horrible health situation on the court. And they're like, Chris, we are not going to allow you to die on the basketball court. Like, we are going to make you medically retire. And I think if these situations keep popping up, like if next summer, if Bill Self has to have a couple more stints put in his heart, I think Kansas is going to, the university is going to have to ask some tough questions. What do you think about that?
Well, I think they have a guy in place as his top assistant in Jacques Vaughn, who has, I don't know how many NBA games he coached, but he coached a significant number of games in the NBA.
I believe more than 5 seasons.
Very respected, and that's an 82-game regular season. And so that's a lot of games. And obviously, he's a Jayhawk. I have not been over there. I've seen him once in person when I was over there last summer and ran into him, and he was very nice. I covered his entire career at the University of Kansas, and he was always a very intelligent, really smart guy, even as a true freshman. Roy Williams gave him the keys to the car and said, run the offense as the point guard, as a true freshman, and he did a really good job. He's really special. So, it could be that if they lose Coach Self for an extended period within the season, they've got a guy there who's coached a lot of games, who's been there the entire year, who knows the talent, knows the players, and he's supported by a really good staff. I mean, Curtis Townsend and
Jeremy Case, Doc Sadler.
Yeah, Jeremy Case isn't so impressive. He is just, if you interview, first time I interviewed him, I couldn't believe how good he was. We were at an NCAA tournament. We had a half-hour show, and we were doing extended interviews with different people. And I got him, and I'm like, this guy's unbelievable. I told him, I remember him when he was in high school. I covered him at his AAU team, and I knew his dad. I knew his dad. They're from Oklahoma, and I said, I can't believe how great an interview you are. He goes, yeah, I've got more confidence now. Coach Self has complimented me, and it makes me feel better about myself and more confident. So I think they've got a really good staff in place, and they got a guy that's coached a lot of games at the NBA level who knows this talent. Is he as good as Bill Self? Well, I don't know. Jacques Vaughn hadn't won multiple national championships and is not yet in the Hall of Fame. But if you can't have Coach Self for an extended period, at least the University of Kansas has somebody they can turn to.
Yeah, KU and K-State tipping off tomorrow, a little past 7 p.m. out there in the Little Apple.
Big game?
Yeah, big game. Hopefully, 304th edition of the Sunflower Showdown.
I mean, who's a bigger four?
Well, I mean, Kansas needs to win to keep to stay alive. But if K-State got the win, there'd be 4 in a row against the Jayhawks at their own place. They'd be another win in conference play. There'd be 2 in a row. I think it'd be big momentum for the Cats, but I don't think they can compete with KU.
Well, on paper they can't, but there were some other times they shouldn't have won that game, and they did. There are people grumbling. People wearing purple are really grumbling about Jerome Tang and saying, okay, what's he done lately? He had that great year, unbelievable year, took him to the Elite Eight. Great opportunity to go to the Final Four, a dynamic guy. I don't know about you. I thought, boy, they have found the guy. I really did. And I'm surprised that he's had the same problems with his roster that Bill Self has had, quite frankly, the last 3 years. They've spent money, and it hasn't necessarily resulted in better play, at least not in the tournament. And so if they don't make it, that'll be I think the 3rd straight year Kansas State has not made the tournament, and they're paying him pretty good.
Yeah, certainly more questions than answers for them, and it has not looked good since that one run. Where'd they go to the Elite Eight? You were there in New York.
Yeah, that was great. They had a great point guard, and they had a bunch of players. They had a bunch of guys who could contribute, and enough talent that they had about 8 or 9 guys that contributed. You didn't know who was going to be the guy. They bring a guy in and he wouldn't do anything. They bring another guy in, he did 3 threes. And that's how you get to the Elite Eight and to get to go to the Madison Square Garden. And they, quite frankly, probably should have won that game. Who beat them? Was it Florida International?
FIU? FIU is no way they went to the Final Four.
Well, it was a Florida team that made it. The one year they were really good.
UCF? FAU, Florida Atlantic, because they had the Owls. Hoot. That's who it was. We got there eventually.
And obviously, but if you're Kansas, you do not – you're on a run. You were playing bad. Now you're playing good basketball. You get a big win at Colorado without your coach on the road against a decent team, and you want to keep that momentum going. And you have an opportunity to win the next 3 games. You cannot stub your toe in Manhattan, Kansas again. So I think those are the 2 things that are on the line there.
Yeah, certainly also another storyline to look out for. A lot of KU fans looking at the health of Darren Peterson, who did sprain his ankle late against Colorado. We'll see how he can do tomorrow night against the K-State Wildcats.
Can we mention the Missouri Tigers? Tigers need to be 500 in their league if they're going to make the tournament. Their non-con was so bad. It was a bad schedule to begin with, and then they get beat by Kansas and get run by Illinois, embarrassed by Illinois. They've got to have a good conference record if they're going to make the NCAA tournament. This is a winnable game. Oklahoma has been a disappointment. They need to beat the Sooners tomorrow in Columbia.
Hey, the Tigers did beat Florida, the defending national champions, but obviously have lost some games that they would have liked to win. But now moving back to football, there are 2 conference championship games coming up this weekend. The first one on Sunday, a 2 p.m. kick. You can watch that game right here on KCTV5. The New England Patriots taking on the champions of the AFC West and the top seed in the conference, the Denver Broncos, although Denver playing without their starting quarterback, Bo Nix, who suffered a broken ankle, I do believe, in the last game. Neal, let's start on the AFC side quickly. We got about 5 minutes left. Broncos against Patriots. Patriots, obviously, I think, have the edge here. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Broncos, well, statistically, this is not a game. I mean, New England should win this game easily. But the deal is the Patriots win with defense. The Broncos win with defense. We have seen them week after week after week pick up victories over teams they ought to blow out, but their offense is so putrid under Bo Nix that they cannot win games. So he played better, certainly played better in the last game with that nice drive at the end of the game, and then got him into overtime, and then made a decent throw. It ended up being a pass interference call. But the reality is he made some good plays in the pass game. He is up and down. So I think the Broncos still have a path to victory because they'll have to do it with the win, with their defense. If they can turn the Patriots over, get some short fields, they've got a guy who can throw the football. And they've got a guy who's played some games in the NFL. So I think that they are capable of winning this football game. I think it's going to be exciting. I'll be interested to see it. Maybe in some ways more interested to see the Rams and Seahawks. I'm kind of sick of them.
Yeah, well, that's the matchup there on the NFC side. If you guys did not know, the L.A. Rams are going to have to go to Seattle to take on potentially Sam Darnold / Drew Lock out of Lee Summit High School. And the Seattle Seahawks, that one kicks off at 5:30 p.m. on Sunday. Seattle listed as 2.5-point favorites. Neal, I think this is a matchup that a lot of people wanted to see there in the NFC, maybe 2 of the best teams in the league. What are your kind of thoughts? I mean, Matt Stafford, first-team All-Pro, and I think down the stretch in last week, he really made some big plays to help the Rams get to this point.
Yeah, I was rooting against them. I like their coach, but I was rooting for the Bears. I thought that would be a much better story. And to see a team play a third time, these 2 teams are from the same division. They're playing, it's like an intramural to me. I don't know very much about Seattle. I haven't seen them very much this year because they're in the NFC. Clearly, the coaching change benefited them. They played much better football, and I think they got a good coach. Their quarterbacks played to a high level, but as you said, Sam Darnold's been up and down health-wise. I'd love to see Drew Lock play.
Well, right along those lines, you've seen Drew Lock when he was here in town. You saw him when he was here at Missouri. Maybe, obviously, he's had quite a story with everything that's gone on in his life. What are maybe some things that have stood out to you just watching Drew Lock in his career?
He's persevered. He's a gamer. He wants to play and he wants to win. And when he gets opportunities to play, he usually plays pretty well. I don't know that it was a true quarterback derby when he got beat out for the job at Seattle. They brought him in, and they brought in
Darnold.
No,
or Geno Smith.
Yep. And they went for it. But Geno Smith, from what I understand, got a lot more snaps with the starters than Drew did. I like Drew Lock. I wish his dad Andy were here to see his son be able to play in the playoffs if he can get in. Andy, of course, passed away in shocking fashion a year ago. What a great family. I love covering them. And I always root for Kansas City kids. I just do. So I have to be honest. I'd love it if he could get in the game.
Yeah, amen to that. He's one of our own, and we will always cheer him on here in Kansas City. Neal, I'm going to let you take the floor here. This is your topic.
See, I have
no idea what this is about.
Okay, I watched the national championship game
on
Monday night, and Carson Beck walked off the field. Did he ever shake anybody's hand? Did he ever go to the locker room? Why did he walk off the field? He walked off the field.
I don't have a lot of defense for this. I do believe I saw his quote. I did not see him say this. I just saw it typed out, and I'm not saying that I agree with this, but this is what he said, that he does not owe anybody a handshake. All he owes is up to the standard that he expects himself to play to, and he did not play to that. Now, what I will say...
He's a baby.
What I will say,
a baby.
He should have shaken their hands after the game. But also, Neal, you've been at a lot of these championship games at any level, conference, state, whatever it is. after these games, there's a lot of celebration. There's a lot of running around. Not necessarily a lot of people always shaking hands. Would you agree with that?
No, absolutely. And had he walked over and it was, but he just walks off the field. And he's got his little mini entourage.
I'll just say this: Carson Beck, I think, is really misunderstood. I think Georgia
last year. When he
left Georgia, I think they needed to sell to their fan base that Gunnar Stockton was going to be okay. And part of their selling of that was trashing Carson Beck on his way out the door. And I will say, at the University of Miami, internally, everyone has spoke glowingly about Carson Beck. He's been a great student. He's been a great athlete. He's been a great leader. He should have shaken hands after the national championship. Tip of the cap to Indiana.
Yeah, we only got a second. I was disappointed he didn't do it. I thought he played well enough to win, and I agree with you. I thought he got bashed in Georgia, and I'm so glad. I'm really glad for him that he had a good season. He wasn't the reason Miami was there. Their defense was the reason they were there, but I'm glad that he had a good season.
All right, folks, we'll see you later. Take care.